Okay, good morning. So the while function, which was new in FileMaker 18 and is also current in FileMaker 19, is a very interesting yet somewhat complex function. I'll go over the different parts of it and some multiple example use cases that I've used it with, and some things, some gotchas to look out for, some issues you need to be careful of how using it. So to start with, it started in FileMaker 18. It's broken into 4 sections, and they're labeled right in the function when you call it up as initial variable, surrounded by brackets, condition, which is when it determines when it's going to end its looping routine, the logic you want to perform, and the result. I have simplified that presentation into while 1, 2, 3, and 4 because there's 4 parts to it. Parts 1 and 3 are both within square brackets, indicating that you can have optionally multiple parameters, whereas generally in 2 and 4 it's a single parameter or text string. So this is a looping function that works a lot like recursion. So it could actually replace virtually all of your custom functions and be more modular because it's a script step, which generally you're going to test with in the data viewer. And you'll see why a little bit further on. It sets variables to start with under initial variable. It increments a counter. It provides a result. And you can use with it the set recursion formula, which is also new, I believe, in 18. But I make a point right on the first slide here is set recursion is generally done with while, so it doesn't spin out to infinity and give you a question mark. But when you put together a while function, you want to set up the set recursion first outside of the while function. I'll demonstrate. So you would have a script that set recursion, then you would perform the while function. At the end, you will determine how many recursions you want it to go up to. So set this first. I'm going to go over each of the steps and how they're done. Any questions here so far? Good. So it's a 4-part function. The first part, initial variable, and literally this is quoted from the FileMaker website. Variable definitions that will be available to use in the following parameters. It means initial variables, but it can include multiple variables. This is where you initialize your counter, whatever you're going to call it, as a parameter. If the variables have persistent values throughout the while function, you set them here inside the initial variable, or you can set them in a let function outside of the while function above it. In other words, you could set your variables, your parameters, within one script step outside of the while function or within the initial variable, but set them here. They're done once, not loops. So the loop does not happen within the initial variable. The looping happens from the condition to the logic ending in the result. So the bulk of the looping happens in here. Basically, you can visualize it as you set up your variables, you run a loop until a condition is met, and that loop recycles the logic until it's done looping, and then gives you a singular result. So basically everything's happening here, but the looping is comparing the condition until it stops to produce incremental results. One thing that's real important is that the result that you're going to use, which would be some kind of parameter or local or global variable, you have to initialize it in the initial variable. I have been tripped up by this so many times that when I don't put the name of my parameter for the result in the initial variable, the whole thing fails. They don't make this really clear to you. It's a little ambiguous. So you want to establish all your variables here, including the counter and including the result variable, before you even write your logic and your condition.
Hey, John.
Yes.
When I've been playing with this, the feeling that I've gotten, and I'm just curious just whether you think this is right or not, the only opportunity you have to get, shall I call it, external data, in other words, data that's not inside the while function, is in those initial variables. You can't, for example, have logic that uses data from a field. It has to basically be, it's almost like the while function is self-contained, and the data has to come in through the initial variables. And if it doesn't come in that way, you can't use it.
You can use direct calls to fields as you can, but I would think that it would be highly recommended that you abstract everything into into parameters or local variables within this.
Okay.
However, as I mentioned
that
earlier,
was the feeling that I got, is that I really sort of had to do that. Maybe I don't.
No,
have to.
You don't have to. What I'm gonna show you later, though, is outside of the while function and outside of the set recursion step, I'm going to put a let statement above it to initialize some of my variables, even outside of the initial variable. It can be done in either place. But generally, you're going to want to get a hold of all the information from whatever fields or other sources you have, and bring it into this script step, which can be a very complex, deep script step, and do all the work within it without constantly revisiting fields, because you're not going to set anything anyhow. And in the environment I'm working in with this medical products company, they have constantly 250, 260 users in FileMaker. We have to be very careful what we do during the day, and we have to keep this thing highly optimized for performance. They've got their own servers that are better than Amazon servers. It's amazing. But in order to keep everything going, we have to lightweight, abstract everything we can. Every time we do anything, we have to abstract it, because every interaction with a field, whether you're pulling or pushing data, is going to slow things down. So I would encourage you to abstract it as much as you can in the let statement above, but then everything else you need in the initial variable. Don't be referencing external fields or external variables somewhere else any further into the section past step 1, initialize variable. Abstract it and do your work. Does that help? Now, I don't know if there's any hard and fast rules, but this is my sense of it.
Yeah, that was my sense as well. I thought it was harder and faster than that, but that's good.
So step 2, conditions. Right here, condition. A Boolean expression evaluated before each loop iteration. So you're looking for a condition to be true or false. It's really Boolean. So it's a very simple thing. When it's false, the loop stops. So until we get, is your counter less than whatever the limit value is? And when it is no longer less, then it's false and it stops. So simple Boolean condition. Generally in that Boolean condition, at least the counter limit until the loop ends. So there's a big movement in the FileMaker coding community because of the parallel actions in like JavaScript and other programs for a counter to reduce it to an I. And I tend to put all of my script parameters within a script with a tilde character to differentiate them from a variable or some field value or something else. Therefore, if I have a field called limit, I don't have to worry about confusing that with my parameter if I call it tilde limit. So you'll see a lot of this. But basically the idea here is the counter, which I'm calling I, and so long as it's less than the limit, the while function will proceed to loop. But as soon as it equals that limit, it stops.
John?
Please.
Quick question.
Yeah.
I'm curious about your tilde notation, that convention. What is that supposed to mean?
And it's just a character that's legal to use, and it's easy to see, and it quickly to the eye differentiates a script parameter from a script variable, a global, a local variable, or a field name. Because if I just use a word or some letters, to me, it doesn't catch my eye to let me know that, oh, that's a parameter. I might think it's something else. But it's short, it's non-invasive, and yet because it's got a curve to it, unlike most Arial or Helvetica fonts, whatever we're using, it catches the eye lightly, and it seems to be intuitive. Does that answer your question?
Sure.
I use that as well for my let variables. So the way I describe it is a double $sign is global, a single $sign is script based. They call it local, but the tilde is kind of a squiggle like a $, and it's hyper local. Or local local, and
Right.
so it's kind of in keeping with naming variables. It's just super local.
Which brings up a discussion that perhaps in another meeting sometime, I'd love to share with you guys something I learned at this new job, along with some communication with Darren Terry, Pacific Data Management in San Jose, California, that there are, I don't know the right term, but there are script stack levels. And normally when you're in a script, you're in stack level 1. And when you go to a subscript, you're in level 2. And you go to another subscript, you're in 3. But there's also a level tier or level 0. So in some cases, local variable, single $, will persist in an interface outside of a script. And there's some cool trickery you can use with that, combined with the let function and other functions and the hide object feature, especially in card windows. And we're using a lot of that, and it works really well. Another conversation to have aside.
Okay.
But that's something to think about, that script stack level 0 does persist in browse mode outside of a script, depending on how it's configured. So while function, step 3, the logic. Variable definitions that are evaluated each time the loop is repeated. So this is evaluated on every cycle of the loop. Multiple parameters can go in there. That's why you have square brackets. This is where you actually increment the counter until it meets the condition, which is one of the first things that was hard for me to understand. And then, of course, you perform some logic. So simply put, if you had a very simplistic while function, I'm going to show you an example of, you're going to initialize your counter variable here, parameter. The condition is going to check to see when it's exceeded the limit parameter, and the logic is going to actually increment the counter. So it seems a little backwards. To me, it's like initialize, increment until, but it's actually initialize, perform the loop until, and then do the logic and end up with the results. So in my mind, these two are, in an intuitive sense, kind of backwards. You're doing your work in logic until the condition's met. So I think what the logic behind that is, to best I can figure out, is it's the condition is checking to see, should I bother doing the logic or skip to the result? Am I done? So I've initialized. Is the condition still good? Oh yeah. Then go here and do my work and then end up with the result. So the programming logic makes sense, but intuitively from a developer point of view, these two steps appear backwards to me. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I see it both ways.
Yeah, both ways. Depends on your perspective, right? I'm not really a programmer, so I have to kind of put my head around that. And number 4 is the result, an expression that is returned when the loop stops. And it can include calculations. So the result isn't just simply whatever the logic dumps out. You can take that and do whatever you want with it at the end. So a lot of times you might do a substitute or an addition of some sort.
Trim 4.
Trim 4, obviously, yes. So that's the basic 4 steps. So this new function, this script step, has a lot of applications. This is not an exclusive list, but I'm using it a lot with JSON. I'm using it, and I will show you an example of creating XML. You can use it for calculating summaries, for some simplifying script loops in the sense that you're condensing them all to one line. You can remove an entire large loop in a script and shrink it down, so you can shrink the size of your scripts. And it integrates well with the let function, with JSON and other things. So it's not like this standalone thing. It plays well with all the other functions. This is the key that you might run into problems. Syntax is critical. You have to establish the variables in the right order. It's easy to make syntax mistakes if you don't type things out just right and put the semicolons where they need to be and not where they don't need to be. If you don't have the brackets in the right place, the variables aren't consistently named the same throughout, you can trip. when you're in a script and you're looking at the while function, all you're going to see is one line, right? You have to open it up. It's kind of reminds me of when we used to use find with the restore feature, and all the script shows you is find restore unless you print it. And to know what you're restoring, you got to drill into the damn thing. So I never use find restore. I'm always enter find mode, set fields, perform find, because I want to be able to read it. This is, I've heard other developers say they want to avoid the while function because it's not easily read when you're outside of the step just looking in a script, which is another issue that comes up. When you're testing it, you can't really test it within a script. You have to pull out all the code, put it in the data viewer, and test it there in order to perfect it. That's kind of the downside. The testing and the visibility are limited within a script.
Does 2Empower, John, work with it?
I work with 2Empower FM all the time, yeah.
And
That
it
helps.
works, the evaluate function works with the while?
Yeah, you can do that. That's
Cool.
a great idea. Who here, raise a show of hands, uses that 2Empower FM software? That's Martin, you? No?
Sorry, what was that?
Do you
It's
use
noisy
the
here.
2Empower FM tool?
I have not used it, no.
Great.
Oh,
great
we're going
tool.
to have a presentation on that next month.
Yes,
It's
please.
a
Everybody
fantastic
should be
tool.
using it.
It's kind of an analysis tool when you're looking for things live without taking the system offline and looking at XML or DDRs. I use it all day long, especially at this new job, because there are thousands of scripts, and some of the scripts I'm working with each have over 2,000 lines to them. And sometimes that's 10 scripts tied together. So I can end up using 10,000 lines of code easily that I'm looking through, and I'm looking for a text name, and it might be the name of a field or an assertion value or a function call, because it reads it as XML. Anything that you put a little a text string in, it'll find it regardless of what the object is. Great tool. And you can use that with a while function to test it out and go to the evaluate right in the middle of a live code run. But when I'm coding, I'm going to probably test it out in the data viewer while I'm writing the script and debug it there.
Yeah, I use it both writing code and because if you've got the calculation dialog box open, you can highlight parts of it. Whereas in the evaluate under the data viewer, it's a little more tedious in some situations. So.
Right, exactly. So there's the right time to use the right tool. So I'm hand in hand using data viewer and 2Empower FM depending on the circumstance. It's difficult to see the results of error code. So if your logic changes or your schema structure changes, it's going to be hard to detect errors in the while function within the script. That's why, again, if something changes it, that's where you'd probably be using 2Empower FM when live in production, something has changed and you want to test it out in the middle of the script live that's already been written. And again, like I said, it appears cryptic within the scripts because you can't read it without opening it up. You have to see the results in steps. So if you're in an environment where your logic is so complicated that you need to see the various results and steps that you would do in a loop instead of just a net sum value, which is what kicks out in the while function, there's one response. It's going to be one string. Now, it might be a string you end up parsing or something, but it's going to be one parameter that comes out of it. If you need instead to see the steps, then this is not the function for you to use in this case. Use a scripted loop instead. So this is not a universal replace for all custom functions and all loops and all kind of recursion, but it has powerful utility in the right environment.
John, do you ever use it in virtual list, create a virtual list report or?
I use virtual lists, but I don't do a lot of it. I'm doing more of it here because we use it a lot for abstracted value lists that are context independent.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see a need for the while function there.
Okay.
Good thing to keep in mind though, that may come up. I haven't seen it yet. So it will condense the script steps into a fewer number of steps. that way it will shorten the script length. So this is the benefit of it. You can do a lot in maybe 10 to 20% the depth of the script by the length of the script by putting it here with greater depth for one step. And it's really good for parsing JSON arrays. I will do my best to demonstrate something like that for you. So that is it for the PowerPoint presentation.
But John, can I
You can.
interject a few things here?
Sure.
It seems to me that if you're wanting to create something with the wild script, with the wild script step,
Yeah.
and you're using a script, you might be more than likely to just want to write out a loop to test how it's going to work before you go ahead and implement the while function, get rid of that loop. So, you know,
That's a good idea, yeah.
I mean, it seems to me it'd be very hard to just write that one line of code and expect it to work, because I'm always getting tripped up on you know, when to exit a loop and that sort of thing.
I'm still pretty new at this while function thing. Everybody was. Oh, by the way, I went to Germany last year and I spoke at the .fmp conference, and Kevin Frank was supposed to come and speak on the while function. Again, this is last June 1st, a year ago. So whatever, 14 months ago when it was brand new. Kevin couldn't make it because of some family dynamic. And so man from France, I can't think of his name, black hair and beard, really nice man. Fabio something. He gave the presentation on the while function, and he renamed the class to While Kevin Is Not Here, which we thought was fun.
I have one other observation, John.
Still coming
So
on that
you
one.
don't need to, you can use the while function when defining just a calculation. You don't need it in the script step. And I'm really curious about the impact that would actually have
Of what?
on your responsiveness of your solution, that to have something be recalculating recursively in a solution that's not being triggered by a one-time script seems that you might have a real performance penalty depending upon the situation.
I don't know that there's been performance standards made on a looping script versus the while function. It's just more condensed code where you can put things together tightly. And where I was going with mentioning that the While Kevin Is Not Here class last year is that this thing is only just a little over a year and a half old, and it is new. And even in my company, when I first came here in April, like no one had ever used it. My boss didn't even know what it was, and she's the FileMaker developer, right? And now I've seen that other people have used it, but in our entire system with tens of millions of records, it's only used 5 times. So it's new. So I would say your idea about testing things out in a script before going to the while function is really more of a function of familiarity. Because it's new and none of us are expert at it, or very few people are, testing things out in a loop and then moving it to while might be the, so reminding me I have a meeting here. It might be the short-term approach, but the more I get familiar with it, the less I feel like I have to do that. I'm like, okay, I know what to do. I've tripped over it enough. And the results are pretty obvious. I may use a smaller record count so that the loops are smaller. I may set the recursion down for testing something. But I think as you get familiar with it, you won't need to have that sense of surety with script loops.
But I agree. It's a nice technique until you get confident enough with your while writing.
So what I've done is I've made 2 tables. I have one with the while code in it and a bunch of records where I explain it, and I saved some of the values. I have a problem working with a terminal server at my job that a lot of times FileMaker will crash several times a day because of the terminal server connectivity. And that means everything that's in my data viewer gets lost, right? It just disappears. So I tried to back up some of these different functions I want to show you in a field called while code that I can now paste into the web viewer. This here I actually put in a couple places in the web viewer, and it's a legend of the things I showed in the presentation, the 4 basic steps. It's nice to keep something like this handy. I'm happy to give you this. So you can have it as a reference. And then when I take out the different steps, what I'm showing here is a basic layout of the while function, doing something very, very simple. And I'll show you that one in the data viewer in a moment. But I like to keep something like a legend handy. So I do that in all my scripts, especially things like position, or maybe not pattern count, but anything that's got 3 or 4 parameters and I forget which happens in which order, I'll always, comment it out, and I'll leave at least one line so I can remember what I'm doing when I'm looking at it. But especially for something new like this, I'll have a legend. So
I thought you were the legend, John.
Sorry?
I said, I thought you were the legend.
Yeah, right. No, that was Will Smith in a movie in New York about everybody dying of a bad mutation of an anti-cancer genetic thing. So the first section.
Nice synopsis. Good, John.
You like that?
Yeah, it was good.
It's like the only one that lives too. It was like a zombie movie, right?
Yeah.
Originally starred Vincent Price.
Oh, there's an older movie version? Really?
Yeah. It's not called I Am Legend, though. I think it's called like The Last Man on Earth.
Oh, cool.
Okay, you're dating yourself now, but okay. Vincent Price. Wow. Here's the first section, initial variable. That should be an S with parentheses around it. So I'm making my counter here. You're going to see a lot of this, depending on how much time you give me. I equals 0. Then the very next thing I do is I'm going to declare my result parameter, because if I don't, it will break. So at the end, I'm going to get this result. But if you don't declare it, which I could not find any documentation on, it will break. So I do it right away. I put my counter variable, my result variable, then any other variables. In my company, they're moving towards dot delimited variable names. So var.to, and you get used to that after a while. And then you want to put your, what?
Okay. I suppose it'll work okay here. It's just you can't name fields that way because it'll break.
No, you can't name fields that way, but my company has mandated that all variables, and therefore all script parameters, will be dot delimited instead of underscore or camel case. It's just a rule I have to live with, so I'm practicing it where I can.
Okay.
As long as it's not external, Beverly won't scream.
Beverly, I'm with you. I put up a little fit over it, and I was squelched really quickly. So
JavaScript hates it, SQL hates it, the rest of the world hates it.
I know.
You can't dot anything.
I hear you. Thank you.
Well, because dot actually means something in those languages.
I'm not pitching it by doing it here. I'm practicing for my company, probably in my own work.
So in a let function, could these be dollar variables that you could pass externally?
Yes. In fact, what I will do is duplicate this record. Where's my duplicate? And in here, I will show you, no, we're not going to run it. This is just a field, right? I might do a let function, right? And then normally I would do that. And I might do dollars limit, right? Equals 50. And this is what's interesting. You could take that out. I could remove that. Of course, then you got to remember to take out that semicolon like anything else in FileMaker. I could change this to dollars limit. It'll still work. You don't have to declare the limit within the script variable declaration. It can be used outside, but you do have to declare the result. So you could do it this way, or double dollars, it doesn't matter. Okay?
Do you ever get square brackets confused when you put a while inside of a let?
Yeah, you can. So what I really do is I don't do this. A little hard to do inside of a field, but I always do, like when I'm coding, I indent everything. So I would come in here and indent everything. Now, I won't indent that. Well, I will, excuse me. I'll indent that, But you notice the parameters inside the square bracket, I indent more than the ones that aren't. So on this line, they're indented only as far as the square bracket, but then I would come in and do that, and then you'd have to
Indent the result
you actually,
because you're in your let.
something like this.
Yeah, you also need a square bracket after the.
Excuse me, I need a
Oh
round
wait,
bracket. I need a round bracket. If I
And
were to do it this way, right? So the while all happens here. So you got open and close brackets, right? Then you've got two parameters to the function parameters to the let function. So you have to close that and your result outside of the square brackets for the let function.
oh,
So
okay, there you go.
your let's happening there and your results happening there. So you could do it this way as well, which I'll do a lot of. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yeah.
Go back to the beginning. So this is a simple one, and let's see if I can demonstrate this one if I can find it.
Who would like it if the data viewer or the calculation engine would automatically indent things?
If it
That
what?
would be great. Yeah.
Automatically indent.
Yep, I vote for that.
Oh, if it automatically indented? One thing I have noticed in FileMaker, which I really like, is if I go to do say I use get, and I like an extra space, user count, right? Since I put a space in the beginning of it, it's going to honor the one in the following. If I did it instead as get user count without a space, it's going to honor the lack of letting or spacing in there based on how I typed in the beginning. That's kind of cool. But it'd be nice.
Oh, I never noticed that.
Anybody
Yeah.
ever know that? Right?
Huh.
It depends entirely on what you do as soon as you do that. If I do a space, it's still going to look for the function. But if I do a count name, right? The moment I hit the enter key, it gives me an additional space at the end. That I like.
That's great.
Because I am really big about space. This bugs me. That to me is laziness because the punctuation is bad and it's not readable to me, personal thing. And I'm trying to change the standards at my company gradually by enforcing this. And I have one person who's on my team.
Yeah, space around stuff is easier to read. Yeah.
I'm going to show you a really simple one. How much time do I got, Jonathan? If I'm only going to 11, I'm never going to get through everything.
Just go to, yeah. Martin's presentation, I suspect, is shorter. So no problem.
So if we took up to another half an hour to get through it, okay?
What do you say, Martin?
Prepared 78 slides, Jonathan. What are you talking about?
78. Well, sound like me a couple
he's
years ago.
Joking. His topic is minuscule.
I'm leaving now. I've been insulted.
But the topic is self-contained and very small.
Okay.
Not very small. I said that wrong. His topic is succinct. I don't know. How long do you think you need, Martin?
Do what you need to do, John. It's okay.
All right. Let's see if I can do it in like 20 minutes.
Whatever.
By the way, if it wasn't for Stephen Gallagher, I would still be giving 127 slide PowerPoint presentations at DevCon. That's where I started, 127 slides. I've gotten it down to like 42 in an hour. So in this one, and here you see the indenting. If I use a while function without a let, I love the indenting. The ones that aren't in the brackets are indented at the same level as the beginning of the square brackets for readability. That might change. So first I declare my counter to be 0. Generally, you could try -1, but you'll find that 0 works because it will go through this one. Even though it hits the value, it's still going to perform the one loop. So if I say the result is null because I want a result, I have to declare that. And if I were to demonstrate, generally, turn on auto evaluate, I have found that it would break. This time it's not. Make a fool of me. Great. And then the limit I'm hitting is 1. So as long as I is less than the limit, I equals I plus 1. So what happens is the first time through, it's 0 plus 1, right? So it's 1, and this sees the 1 and adds it to itself, and you get 2, and it comes back again and fails. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it gets a little squirrelier when you set the limit to 1 and you go to I plus 2 or something different, you get a 4. But if I make the limit 2 and 1, you get 4. If I make the limit 3, it goes to 6. It's just something you got to get used to. So it's adding 2 each time, but I'm only adding 1 to it, right? I did a spreadsheet.
That's because your result is I plus I, isn't it?
It's I plus I. I did a
Yeah.
The pirates
spreadsheet.
would say I.
If I make the increment 2 and then the limit 2, I get 4. But if I do this right, I can't show both at once. Increment 2, limit 2, increment 2. I need 8. But if I increase the limit, which is the iterations, it limits the number of iterations, you get 8. I still get 8. And I still get 8. 5, I get 16. 6, I still get 16. Because you're adding 4, right? And it adds up quicker. It never really gets there.
You could write your own mod function, John.
You can, right? Absolutely. But look at that. 5 gives you 16. 6 gives you 16. 8 gives you 16. 10 gives you 24. 11 gives you 24. 12 gives you 24. 13. So you got to kind of predict when you're doing something as simple as adding I to something. So this is kind of a thing you probably don't do a lot of, but that's about as simple as it gets, adding the counter to itself. But the results were what I predicted. It came out a little escalated on a spreadsheet, and I had to actually type it up to get a sense of it, what it's doing. So just a little reference point. If I go to, let's see, what else have I got here? So I demonstrated that. I am going to show you a little bit of JSON code that I've got and how I'm going to use the get element to do that. And I'm going to build on a theme. Then I'm going to start doing a let function. And then I'm going to put it inside of a while function with a let in the beginning. And this, I'll show you the code, but let's walk through this. If I'm going to declare a script parameter called JSON within a let function, and I've got some code called JSON code, and let me see if I can find that for you. Yeah, here it is. I have to scroll down. It's not large enough. So I've got a bunch of keys that come down, and then I've got not exactly an array because I don't have the square brackets, but it's an array. And so you can see the keys go pretty deep, starting with data, cost, school, department, class, supplies, and then I go into amounts. Why do I keep getting that? Okay, so I list the keys, and this is something you can really use with the while function. Is you can find out what the keys are, and then you can iterate within the while function through the keys. So I got the list of keys. Then here you can see, answer to you, Martin, I actually did the get JSON code inside the while argument. So you can do that. Be better to declare it up front and only reference it once, because otherwise you've got to like reference that field every loop through. But I show that it can be done. And I'm trying to get the total amount here by looking at this path, data, cost, school, department, class, and then go looping using the I to loop through the different keys in the array. I'm able to get a total and an amount. It gets a little heady, but it works really. That's it integrating. Let's go back to something simple. Let's see where this is. While listening pipe. So I've got a field, so you can see an example where it breaks really easy. What I'm trying to do here is to reference a list of pipe delimited names, get a count of the list. I spelled function wrong, but that doesn't matter. It's just commented out. And I'm using an XML function that I've got. I'll show you how that works. To encode these values in XML and get an XML stack. The concept, it doesn't like this at all. What's going on here? Oh, I might have renamed the table. Oh, I did. There we go. I renamed it to Prezo just this morning. Great. Because I wouldn't want to confuse you guys with the while function thing. Now, what I end up here with is a list of names that are all encased in some XML that I can then pass as one parameter somewhere. But how did I start with that? I came up here, I have to change this to Prezo, showing how important the context is. I'm getting that as a list. I'm getting the value count of the list. And here you see I've inactivated the while function because I just wanted to show you a substitution of nothing. What I normally would do is probably substitute the pipe. Jonathan and I have done this together with a carriage return and return that into a nice list. But let's say I wanted to grab like the first name of everybody in the list. I can take off the deactivation here. And here you see while function, I don't have a variable declared there. As a result, I have the counter and the count, which I've declared outside in the let function. So I've declared my counter, I've declared my count outside of the let function, and as long as it's left in that, I can increment in the logic section of I plus 1 to get whatever might be in the name field, and then a carriage return and the left words of whatever particular line. So if I were to change this to this value, and then change this to name, I'm closer. This is where you can see the syntax is really critical. I want to get this result of name here, but I'm not getting it right.
Hit monitor and it will tell you which field you've got wrong.
Sorry?
Hit the monitor button. Oh, there we go, or that.
Yeah.
Why is it saying substitute?
Well, I just take that out. So the while function needs to be closed, and then I'm going to call the result of the while function here as the end of the script. Oh, look at that. That doesn't help. And so sometimes just getting it to work is a little tricky, right? I've got a table missing. Prezo, list names piped. Count of the list. This is just to show you I'm using an XML function. So those are commented out. This is commented out. Ah. I won't kill a dead horse, but you can see how easy it is to make a mistake somewhere. I've got a left bracket, I've got a right bracket outside of the while function, and then the result name coming from the while function, and I'm still not getting it. So we could spend time debugging this, or you could just kind of get the idea that there's a limitation where it can break. And at first glance, I don't see it. But if I were to just take this and put it in there, just so I know I have the count inside the thing to demonstrate, it doesn't seem to matter. If I is less than count, I equals I plus 1, name equals name, and carriage return, and the left words of the list, name. So that's still going to break. And I would have to spend a little time figuring this out. This is good, actually, that having a problem, and you can see that it's not as simple as that. Here, I'm actually pulling all the names. But if I wanted to get the left, if I did it here, and I just wanted to get the left, go ahead.
You could.
I could pull the left here, but basically just within the, we don't want to go into it all and spend a lot of time, but in here in the stack result, I would do like a parsing and pull the left words 1, and I can end up with a first name list, which I had working last night, very quickly, and it renders really fast. So you could use other functions, but you could take a stack of names that are pipe delimited, turn it into a first name list vertically or whatever very quickly.
So basically, it allows you to iterate through each line.
Yep.
And build a new list from it.
Now, if I came here and I just wanted to get the keys, I had the wrong table, right? I still have something a little bit wrong with my JSON code, because I'm getting the get element. Okay, so let's get that. Okay, so doing JSON in a live demo is a little bit challenging. Here I had done it, where'd it go? I'd done a little more complex thing. Let's see if I can get this to work. Prezo, comma, prezo. There we go, I'm getting a start. So here you're going to see, especially for Martin, I pulled the JSON out of a line that could have been done there and abstracted, so only referenced once up here, and I'm getting 0, right? Even though I'm going through it, I'm actually taking the keys and say data cost, school department, class, and I'm incrementing I through amount. And in theory, this one's working. Because I have 100, 200, and 300, I should get, look at another one, I should get $500 because I'm going to add all these up.
Or 6.
Or 6. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And if one of you finds where I've done it wrong, let me know. So I've got the JSON code being loaded here. I'm listing the keys, and I'm using that to get a count. The count of the keys becomes my iteration. Total equals 0. That'd be why. If I make my total, which is my limit, comparing the counter to the limit, if I make that my count, okay, then I'm going to get 3, at least I'm getting 3 keys, but what I want to go through is dot amount, total plus amount. So this would, each iteration should give me 100, 200, 300, and this would total it up, and I should get 600 down there.
You need a dot before amount.
Do I? Yeah, good question, right? Class, supplies, under class, well, look at the code here. Look at the code there, that's supplies. Hold on a second. There we go. Try it this way. I used a different JSON thing. I had to remove one level from it. So instead of giving limiters, I changed the JSON to make it work. Here I'm getting 503, which isn't quite right, right? I should get 600, right?
It's because you put your total to equal to count, I think.
What's that?
You put total equal to count in the first
Total
bit of the while
equals total
statement.
plus amount.
No,
Total starts O.
Yeah.
Total equals 0. Thank you. Now,
It says 500. Oh, because you're jumping out before you added up the last one, right?
they're not necessarily coming in order, right?
Are you adding the 100 and 200?
Should be adding the 100 to the 200 to the 300, which is 6.
Yeah.
Getting 5 is just the 200 and 300, right?
Yeah, but what if it's adding the 100 and the 200 and then adding the 300 to the 200 telephone?
I think what it's doing is at the beginning of the logic step, you're saying I equals I plus 1, so you're actually missing 0.
Yep, exactly. So here it is. When I came in, and I had these working, and then I broke them on purpose because I wanted to have a conversation, right? So if I go to I, it's starting at 1 because this is a while function, I forgot to mention, is a 0-based algorithm, not a 1-based algorithm. So I'm starting at the first one. So if I come in here in my actual logic and I subtract 1, I get 600.
Yeah, or just put the I equals I plus 1 after the amount line.
Yeah, at the bottom of the logic.
That's
So you
clean.
do that later.
That's
Have you
much
tried
cleaner.
that? I haven't tried that. You're saying just take this after the logic, huh?
Yeah.
Just, yeah, after total equals total plus amount.
In other words, the logic is executed in sequence.
There you go. Yeah. So you don't
Really
want
good
to
point.
increment it until after you've done your calculation.
There you go. That's nice. That's clean. See, I didn't even think about that. But that's a really good point. It's as simple as that, because looking at I minus 1 in the logic is kind of not real clean, is it?
Dorky.
This is kind of like people
Go
who
ahead and
start
say it,
loops.
John. Dorky.
Some people start loops with declaring their incrementing variable and then the exit loop at the top. And I've traditionally put the exit loop at the bottom, but I'm starting to see changing my mindset to putting the exit loop at the top. It means you don't even bother going through it when you don't need to. This is the same kind of logic.
Well, if you're
So there
going
you
to do that, then start off, instead of initializing 1 as 0, initialize it as -1.
Yeah, I tried that. Don't like that. That's messy. I'd rather put it in the logic than in the counter. That way I'd be consistent across all my functions, and it's a little less like thinking double negatives like accounting for me, because I only think in the positive, right?
Yeah.
So to review this one, which captures a lot, you've got a let function. What I didn't include was set recursion. Okay. So what I would probably do would be set recursion, open it, and then, well, you would do an amount, right? Here we're safe to do 50, and then you get it. However, if I set the recursion at 2, well, that's not helpful. If I set it at 3, I get 600. If I set it at 1, you're getting question mark because the function doesn't really know how to work with insufficient recursion values. So typically I'll put 50 or some number larger than that, just to make sure if something squirrely happens, it doesn't run to infinity and give you a question mark.
It's well worth noting that if you don't use set recursion, its default is 50,000.
Right.
But you can increase it or decrease it with the set recursion function.
And this is like giving you a little security blanket that if somebody throws some crazy data in there, you're not going to give it question marks. You're just not going to include all the data possibly. So you might want to put, I don't know, 50,000 is a lot, but it works, right? I don't know what happens if you put 500,000. It's just not going to honor it, right?
Well, it just stops after, when it needs to.
Yeah. This is, the while function is going to stop when it's done. The recursion, it puts a stop on top of it. But again, this is just an interesting point. If I put 3, because it's going to do 3 loops, it's fine. If I do 2, it's not finished its work. So it's coming back with a question mark.
You have your count set up above the while, so you could actually use the count at that point, set recursion to count.
That's it. Is that Beverly?
Yes.
Boy, am I not surprised. That was genius.
And then you can never go above that. It can only recurse 3 times because
That's
you've already
smart.
counted how many times you have to recurse.
There you go.
This is why we keep her around. I'm telling you. That's
That's
really cool.
That's why I get the
like,
big bucks.
yeah.
But she never brings any Chick-fil-A to the meetings.
Oh, well,
I know she likes it.
it's a long drive for her.
Yeah, the Chick-fil-A is not in my town anywhere near.
Oh, there's probably
I have
3 or
to-
4
I
of them
have
on
to
the
go to
road
Rich-
between there and Louisville.
Yeah, I have to go to Richmond to get it.
You're lucky to have Wi-Fi.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
She's lucky to have a cell signal.
I want to close this with just a couple right off the FileMaker website, just so you know where they come from. If I go to the while function on the FileMaker Pro 18 help function, it has examples. It has a lot of the stuff I talked about. And then the set recursion's got its own place on the help tab too to let you know how that works. So you can look those up. But these are literally the examples right off of that page of their while function. They're using a script, well, actually a local variable that has repetitions, and they're going through the repetitions to add up their total, getting 150. So that's an interesting use of it. But notice, this is the way they formatted. I didn't format that, they did that. So they're doing a similar formatting. Here's another one that I made up. And I didn't use the dots, but count is 0, var is 2, var 3. You don't even use these two. They're just fillers to show that they don't have to be used. I declared the limit at 50. I set the counter at 0. Count plus 1, result equals result plus 22, just some number that I like to use arbitrarily. And you get this result, which I'm sure is accurate, but not something I would have expected. If I had put, help me out here, 1, then I'm going to get 50. Very simple. And what did they have, another one? Same thing. I added it to the count and I get 1275. So just some weird functions. Basically, the formatting comes right off the FileMaker website, so they're encouraging that too. Again, I would include you to use some kind of legend, at least in the beginning, to remind yourself of the different steps like that. This is a blow up of the legend with an example in it. And that is what I've got. It's not universally to be applied. I like the idea that Mike said about starting out using a looping script to test out your logic until you get comfortable with it. There are times you don't want to use it. The syntax is important. Like I said, in the short time I have, I can't really concentrate on fixing that one with the XML stack to extract the first names, but that's trivial. But there's a lot of things. JSON works well, XML works well. It interacts with all the other functions. You're going to want to use the let function and the set recursion together, wrapped around the while function. And there's a lot of other things that you could embed in there with it, and it plays well with others.
And I want to reiterate, I think there may be a hazard in using the while function directly in a calculation as opposed to within a script step like you are using. And if that calculation is indexed or unindexed, you could get some unpredictable results, and I think you can get some performance penalties as well. The other thing is,
Excuse me, Michael, you're talking about a calculated field.
a calculated field can
Yeah.
use the while function, and I think there's a danger there.
Perhaps in an auto enter calc, but I could see an unstored calculation. That's a bad idea. This is generally something, in fact, in this company I'm working with, we would only use it as a set field type of function. We would never use it as a calculation. We have almost no calculations in the entire database of 300 tables, almost no calculations. I would say there might be 100 calculated fields in 300 tables. Everything is set, and we do a lot of API type calls, and everything's scripted. So I think I'd be with you that almost universally, I would only use the while function as a script step. It could be triggered with a script trigger as well, but I wouldn't set it as a hard calc. I'm done. Is that good? Anything else? Questions?
Yeah, the only other thing I'd like to interject on that is FileMaker had a reason to come up with this calculation, which means it has a use case for, well, we've actually been looking at use cases here, but I'm thinking they saw a special need for this based upon maybe with JSON arrays and your interaction.
So he's putting down. Oh, okay.
Can we get the phone on?
Yeah.
Right, Mike, we do a lot of JSON work, and you have nested arrays, multiple nested arrays with inconsistent positioning inside the JSON object. Looping through it, the scripts become enormous. I think it's really pairs with JSON very well. Is that where you were going?
Like a fine wine.
Yeah. Fish and Chardonnay.
Yeah, David Geller just joined us. I'll have to get him the video.
What, is this video only available for people in the forum, right?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, so saying nasty things about people won't get out. Unless somebody leaks it.
I'll stay for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and I got to go back to work. I have another meeting in half an hour, but I wanted to spend time. I do want to hear about Beverly's idea offline, Jonathan.
Okay, yeah, we'll talk about it later. It's real simple.
Welcome, David.
Very elegant. David is our token surgeon on our group. Yeah. So I muted you, David, because it was kind of noisy there. You're welcome to unmute if you have something to say.
I don't have anything to say.
Okay. Did you just come out of surgery then? Wow.
Wow.
I'm in the lounge here at the hospital.
How is the COVID environment? Is it everything going well there? Can I ask?
Yeah, it's there's not much changes. The main thing that patients it's the visitation. There's no overnight visitors. I go to another hospital in Indiana where there's no visitors at all. So, it's like going to the vet. You drop your pet off and they call you when they're ready to pick you up. But other than that, it's masks everywhere, and it's for the most part business as usual. But that's really the biggest impact.
Yeah, that's horrible. Last time I dropped a pet off at the vet, I told them don't let him wake up.
Oh.
You don't want to. So that was that's a horrible thought.
ICU units, though, you're not to capacity?
I'm actually pretty busy. March and April into May was pretty much zero, just emergency stuff that came up. But now we're pretty busy. Yeah.
Typically busy though, like 90% capacity, not overflowing.
Actually, I have started doing most of my office work through Zoom, and I'm in the process of moving from my big office, which I only use 2 days a week anyways, and I'm moving down the hall to a timeshare for 1 day a week. So I'm going to save a bunch of money that way. But we've been doing most of my work, most of my patient visits through Zoom, and because of that, I'm able to fit them in between other things. So if there's a surgery scheduled, I can still maybe have 3 hours of Zoom calls to do or something like that. So I'm actually filling up more of the calendar because of that, instead of, just having 1 or 2 dedicated days in the office.
Wow, more efficient.
Yeah, and I can do it from home. In a few weeks, I won't have an office to sit in. I'll just have to find a quiet room, like I'm in the doctor's lounge of the hospital right now. So they have good Wi-Fi here.
So is your work mostly elective types of surgeries?
Yeah. I specialize in weight loss surgery, so almost 100% electives. Unfortunately, there are a few emergencies here and there, but yeah, for the most part, pretty close to 100% elective surgeries.
Okay, well, we just finished up one presentation, and we've got Martin up for the next one. So,
Perfect.
Martin Ramsay, are you ready to go?
I am.
Okay.
Martin, I have to
go
leave at 3, so I don't want Martin to think I'm running out on him.
I'm already ticked off about this.
Okay.
Oh, really? Did you? Oh, wow! You did prepare a big presentation. That's nice.
Yeah.
You got 107
It's okay.
slides. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
Well,
they're fast. You want me to go?
go for it, Martin
Well,
Ramsay.
I think what I'm going to talk about is going to be quite simplistic for a lot of y'all. So maybe I can go fast here. But I thought if you'll indulge me, I wanted to just sort of show some thinking that I had done through the years. And basically, the challenge is, how do you get a pocket full of data from one place to another? And when I say pocket full of data, less than a whole file, more than a field, something like that. And so here's the picture. You got a source file, you got a pocket full of data, you're trying to get it to a target place. That's just the picture of what we're trying to accomplish here. So I wanted to show you how I used to do it back in the day. This is back in FileMaker 6 day. So this is about 2002 vintage. And I came up with a clever way, at least I thought it was clever. I actually still use it, but let me show you. Basically what I've got is, here's my source file, and here's my target file over here on the right. And in between, I have a file that has only one record in it. It's sort of the interim file. And to show you this, I need to show you what the data structure looks like. There's all the data that I'm going to be passing. But here's the key thing. I have this relationship to a shared file, and I just use a simple link. I use the number 1 for the link, so that this file, the source file, always is linked to that shared file. And then let me go over here to the receiving file and do the same thing and show you that it too has a link to that shared file. And because that's an automatic populated field, it's always on, it always works. It's just guaranteed to work all the time. So if I do my method here, I'm going to call it method 1. So here's the data that I'm going to try to pass over here. If I click method 1, boom, it puts it into the shared file, and then I'm going to click on this and it's going to suck it out of the shared file, and there it is. So how does that work? The script just looks like this. I'm going to set those related fields in the shared file, and then in the receiving side, I'm just going to pull them back out. It's real simple, but the fact that there's this one file in between the two works really well. What I use this for these days, I don't use it for this purpose anymore. What I use it for these days is like the logo of the client I'm designing it for. I store that here so that every other field, every other file has reference to it, has access to it. And if they change their logo, I just change it in one place and change it everywhere. Okay, simple stuff. I know you're all going to go, this is way too simple.
Oh, no.
I can use it. That's something I can use, I think. Wow,
Yeah.
something I can do maybe.
Yeah, this is Bev. This is not simple stuff, because I have clients that have SQL and FileMaker, and what they get from SQL is garbage. So I have to have the interim file to do this, and then I clean it up in the interim file before I send it to the FileMaker.
Yeah. Well,
I use this all the time.
Good. All right. Well, you're making me feel better.
Thank you.
I feel like I'm never going to be without this sort of, a one record file that I use to store all kinds of stuff in, and every other file that I have in my solution is related to that file. That's just something that I always do. And I used to use it to pass data back and forth. I don't do that anymore, but that's, you know, so the subject of the day is how do I pass a pocket full of data? Well, this is how I used to do it. So let me talk about the second method I did it. Jonathan, you see I'm going through my slides very quickly, all right? So
I'm sorry. I'll never live that down. Sorry.
So, I mean, this is what I did, you know, store it in the shared file, then retrieve it from the shared file. So that's the way that looks. And this is my slide that says I was going to do the demo. I did it prematurely. I'm sorry. But the advantage of this is it worked in the absence of something better. But the disadvantage is you have to keep track of what record and what field is in. I used to have temp text 1, temp text 2, temp text 3, temp number 1, temp number 2, and so forth and so on. You have to keep track of all that. And it does require this separate file. So is there a better way? Well, yes, we came to a better way using global variables. That came along around FileMaker 8, which I think is, somebody help me out here, vintage about 2006, 7, somewhere around there. I don't remember exactly.
Sure.
But you can create a global variable for each data element that needs to be transferred. You store the data in the variables, and then you retrieve it from the variables. So let me show you what that looks like, except I've got a picture first. Yay, simple picture. Hooray. Time for a demo. Okay. So, by the way, is the vacuuming noise too loud for you all? Can you hear it? Okay, because there's work going all around me.
I was looking for who to mute for that,
well,
but
unfortunately, it's me.
Good thing of what I did.
I didn't recognize a vacuum.
Okay, well, they're doing. Next time I see y'all, I'll be in a different office, and so. But the work is going. It's a little bit crazy here.
Oh, your workplace really sucks, then, yeah.
It does. My workplace sucks. That's right.
Martin, I'm sorry.
Okay, so
I hope I left you enough time to give your presentation. I hope you're not having to rush because of me.
I'll slow down now. It will be outstanding. Okay. So here's method 2. It's not going to look like much, but I'm going to click on this button here. I've got Cody Bloom. Click, and uh-oh, it didn't work. What happened? Now we've got to go look at our script steps here. This is method 2. So we set all these variables, and then we call the script, the second script that's over here. Let's take a look at that script. And okay, it uses those global variables. We'll see I've got $text01, $text01. What's the problem here? What's going on?
The globals don't go between files.
Bingo, hello, winner, 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 chicken dinner. Yeah, that's right. So it doesn't work in this particular scenario that I've set up.
I think that's because all globals are local.
Yeah, if I were to, let's see, oh, y'all's pictures is in the way. I can't see what I'm doing here. Just a minute. If I were to turn on script debugger and do my method 2 again, let's just watch this. So here we go. We're going to perform the script. So we're setting up all the global variables, boom, boom, boom. Then we're going to call that second script from the other file. Here we are, new record.
Show your data viewer.
Yep, that was a really good idea. And so you can see that they're empty.
Yes.
So Jonathan, or whoever that was, got it right that global variables aren't that global. They can't actually cross the barrier. And so if I go back to my presentation, you know, you can create the global variables as needed. You have to keep track of which one you're using for what purpose. Now, that wasn't me. But it doesn't work if you're sending data to another file. It only works across tables in the same file. So this isn't going to work either. So let's go to method 3. And this is my latest one that I thought was pretty cool until I ran across JSON. It's also in FileMaker 8. And basically what I do is I concatenate the field values into a single field as a list. I'll show you what that looks like. And you pass that as a script parameter, and then you retrieve the data from that list of values using the getValue function. Let me show you what that looks like. First of all, let me show you a picture, because I like pictures. Pretty simple. Concatenate the list, pass it as a script parameter, and then use getValue to extract it. And you all are smart people. You're already going, I know what, this is going to be a problem, but Let me just clear some of this stuff out of the way. Oh, I'm in the middle of a script here, so I'm just going to quit that. Okay. So method 3, let me go to another one here. Method 3, boom. Here we go. Then it's going to call the other script, and it's just going to extract those. See these get values here? So it's getting script parameter 1, script parameter 2, script parameter 3. So the question is, what was in the script parameter? Let's just test that out. Let me go in here and say, I want to see what get script.
You already have it there. Your
Do I?
second one down in your,
Oh,
in
so
your
I
watch
do.
list.
Okay, yeah, it's something I frequently keep an eye on. All right, we'll just do that one. Thank you. So there, see, it's got the first name, the last name, the phone number, the address, the comments, that number, that date, and there they are. You can see that they're all there. And so these parameters right here are getting value number 1, which is Kayla, getting value number 2, which is Leopold, getting value number 3, which is her phone number, and so forth and so on. So if I continue this out, let me close that. Boom, 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 boom. It's populating everything. Yay, it works. Hooray. Right? Not so fast. I was using this method for a long time. I really liked it. It was a good way of doing it until I ran across a little situation, and here it is. Notice this comments that I've got here has several lines in it.
Carriage returns.
Yeah, you guys are so smart. So if I try this again, let's just do it. Watch what happens. There it is. And then we pull the data out. Ruh-roh. What happened?
Yep.
It only pulled the first line of comments for method 3 because there's a carriage return right here. And so this get value function doesn't work if you have multi-line data. And I have that. And so this too fell apart, which leaves us with, drum roll please. Oh, wait a minute, let me do the advantages and disadvantages. You can add data as needed, no extra variables or fields needed. You have to keep track of the sequence and the element list, and it breaks if the field contains any carriage returns or paragraph characters. So that doesn't quite work either. And enter JSON, ta-da, which came with FileMaker 16. And I like to think of it as it's a way to just sort of package a bunch of data into a package. And then you can pass that package as a script parameter and then retrieve it by name, which is brilliant, wonderful. So it looks sort of like this. You do this JSON set element, we'll talk about that. You send this package, and then you do a get element, right? So what is JSON? Y'all probably know this, but I'm gonna just, this is the basic stuff here. It stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It's an open standard, a way of packaging data, and it's used not only in FileMaker, it's used in lots of different places, which allows you to ship this package of data very easily in many different ways. You can conveniently add data into the package, extract data out of the package. You can analyze what's inside the package. There's all kinds of things you can do with it. And it's, I don't know, John, if you would say this, but it's reasonably human readable. I mean, you can look at it and say, I think I know what's going on in there, even though there's lots of brackets and curly braces and all that kind of stuff. It works, it's readable. And FileMaker has built in some functions that make handling the JSON objects pretty easy. So
it's actually more readable than XML is.
Yeah, right. I would agree with that. So
it's also a little bit more verbose, though.
It is verbose, and that's why FileMaker's functions that allow you to work on it makes it easier, I think. So
Very much so.
Yeah. In the syntax, you basically have these elements which have a key, which I think of as the name of the element. It's a little broader than that, but I think of it as the key. And then there's the actual value of that key. And the values can be several different types: string, number, object, array, Boolean. Note there isn't one for date, which is kind of interesting. And here's the thing: you can have objects nested inside of other objects. In fact, John, you just showed several examples where there were multi-layer objects, which can get really complicated and so forth. Does anybody know? I don't know the answer to this. Is there a limit to the number of nests and objects that you can have in a JSON object?
I don't think so.
I think that the answer is it's only practical. It's not theoretical. That there are limits.
Yeah, I have a stupid question.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for you, but go ahead.
No, you sure you do. The whole thing, if you've got JSON with a bunch of strings and numbers and objects, arrays and booleans, is the whole thing considered an object?
That is my understanding. That, I mean, and there are objects within objects.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's all an object.
yeah. There's
The whole
one
thing's an
massive.
object.
Yeah, the whole thing's an object,
Yeah.
and then inside that are smaller objects.
And if I want to get one value pair out, that's called an element?
My understanding. That is what I understand.
Beverly, correct? Anyhow, she's off.
Yeah, it's a key value pair, but yeah, they call
Key
it
value
elements.
pair is an element, and then the
Yeah.
entire thing is an object, which can have objects and arrays in it. The gross categories are objects and arrays, and then the
Correct.
finite level is an element with a key value pair. Is that correct terminology?
That's correct. But
Yeah,
arrays have the key and comma delimited values.
Then they can have objects within the arrays and arrays within the objects, and it just
Exactly.
can
Yeah,
keep going.
It got confusing.
Exactly.
You can get it can be very hairy.
That's what I'm dealing with.
Well, I don't know about objectifying your code. I do want to put a little caveat on this because I do use this method all the time, not just for for scripts and also passing parameters into card windows. It's very effective. The one thing that I would caution about JSON strings, because this bit me, is that if you've got some text in some field in some database that people have been bolding some things or colorizing, you pass that with a JSON string, that's all stripped out.
You've lost that. Yeah. Yeah, it's plain text basically that it's passing. That's right.
Then it also has a limitation of being like case sensitive, and certain characters aren't legal. We have to deal with that, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Whereas
Okay.
In the key names, you shouldn't have dots.
right. But when you're using XML, you don't quite have those limitations, right, Beverly?
Because it's, well, you have some limitations, but they're different. But but XML is very case sensitive too.
But XML is it a little more forgiving than JSON?
No.
Okay.
I posted the link to the json.org. Has a really good chart to kind of show you how things, nest and loop on each other.
It can get pretty wild.
Yeah, what you can include inside other things. So.
Yep.
Thank you.
So this example here is straight from the FileMaker website. And so a curly brace starts a new object. There's the object name. This is one called bakery. And then inside that, they've put another one that they called product. And inside that, now here we come to our first pair. So the name of the field is ID and the value is FB1. And then the next pair is name and the value is donuts. And the next one is price, $1.99, and so forth. And then you can see that here's another set of that same data, ID, price, name, but it's chocolate cake for $22.50, and so forth. And then you can see where they end out. So that's what a JSON object looks like. And you've already seen that with what John presented a little bit earlier.
Well, I have another stupid question.
I got no stupid answers. Go ahead.
I know that the arrays are normally set like you show it with square brackets surrounding those three objects. But in my case, and in some cases I see there's no square brackets, but it still functions as an array with curly brackets. And I don't know if that's you, Martin, or Beverly, but I get confused about when I don't see square brackets and curly instead, it still does the same thing?
I'm surprised because what I've experienced is I have to have those square brackets in.
I don't think so. I've never seen an array without the square brackets.
Okay.
Huh. So I don't know. Beverly, this is your chance to shine.
The array allows you index. So you could say, give me product 1. Give me product, well, it starts with 0. Give me product 0.
That would give you
me
donuts.
Product 2.
That would give you
Okay,
baguettes.
that's why you have an array, so that they're, whatever's inside that is part of the array, but you can call it by index.
Okay.
But it all has a square bracket, right?
Right. Yeah, that's what an array is.
What
okay,
if I
so the
stop
square bracket is necessary for an array. Go ahead.
Right.
If I substitute those square brackets for curly brackets, what's the difference in functionality?
I don't know. Try it.
I did. I still pulled it out as an array, but I think it depends on what you're doing.
Well, it depends on how you're calling it.
Yeah, you may not be
If
able to
you're
call it by
calling,
index
you can't
number.
call it by index.
Okay. I'll have to go test
Interesting.
again.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
yeah. Y'all are
So-
teaching me something.
So what you're saying is if it wasn't an array, you couldn't say bakery product name 3 or,
Right.
or 2.
But you
Or
could
no,
say
you would say bakery dot product square bracket 2 and then dot whatever the element name is.
Dot name. Oh, okay.
Okay,
So-
so it's
so
an index is in square brackets. All it's like you know, calling your variables with repeats or your repeating fields. That's
Mm.
basically what the index is.
Right.
okay, yeah. I
And
can see
since
that.
you have multiple indexes,
Correct.
then you wouldn't be able to, if you just did bakery.product.id, you would get just the first one. Or would you get all 3?
I don't know. I haven't tried that.
Oh, okay.
'Cause
Without the square brackets, there's no
Yeah.
way to say, give me the 0 one or the 1 one or the
Yeah.
2 one.
Would you get the first one or
Right.
would you get all? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah,
And
try it.
this is beyond the use case that I had. I needed
Okay.
to just hand off a pocket full of data. And this use case here is like, wow, that's a pretty big pocket.
Well, and this is like your customer invoice items.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And your invoice items would be indexed, you know, your first related record of
Yep.
items.
And
Yeah.
and the example that FileMaker is giving where they use this, they're essentially saying, so on a website, you could build up this JSON object that you hand off and it becomes sort of an API-ish thing where you could make your price list available as an API call, here's your JSON object, have at it.
Right.
So, yeah. Okay.
I just
Well-
checked my code, and in fact, I had substituted in square brackets to get it to work. So you're correct there, and my idea didn't work. And just for fun, if I don't break the chat, I just pasted that giant, rather large JSON object in there, and it does have square brackets. You can copy
Okay.
that.
Okay, cool. Well, just to sort of make sure that I cover kind of the basics, there are a total of 7 JSON functions in FileMaker. The ones I really want to focus on are get element and set element. Let's do set element first, because that sort of makes sense to start with. So here's the syntax of it. It's set element, and then you have JSON, you have the key or index or path, and what Beverly's been talking about, it tells me why that index is important. I didn't really know that. Then the value. So this is the pair right here. And then what type it is, that's an optional parameter, I believe, if I understand it correctly. So, you put those together. Here is probably a more realistic look at that. Set JSON object, JSON, and then here's the key value pair with the type of field, key value pair, et cetera, et cetera. So a whole bunch of them together. This is perhaps more typical. And then the get element is just kind of the flip side of that, is you basically say, so here's the JSON and give me that element. And what I like about it is I can call them by name. So I can say, give me the price, give me the phone number, give me the whatever. And I can pull it out just using this JSON get element, and it works beautifully. So I would like to now show you a demo of this, if I may, please. So I'm going to be, let me go on to another record here just so we don't mess anything up. And method 4, so, oops, I should have erased that because I wanted to build it from scratch. So here we go. I'm going to set this JSON field, just one script step, boom, and here it is. Now you say, boy, that looks kind of bad. It's because it's missing all the carriage returns, but notice that it's got all kinds of crazy stuff in it, and it's just taken care of. FileMaker did all that for me. Let me open up. No, I could do that right here, I guess. Nope, I can't. All right, I'll show you the script steps in just a second. But let me go do the second step. And so now it's calling the receiving file. It's going to create a new record. It's going to set that data that it was sent as a script parameter. So this is the same data that's over here is over here now, and now we're going to use that get element, the JSON get element, to get the first name, the last name, and notice we're getting it by name. We'll get the phone number, we'll get the address, we'll get the comments, and notice that they all came through, including all those crazy characters. That's good. We'll get this number, we'll get this date. Yay, it works. So basically, JSON lets me do what I've been wanting to do without the things that make it break, if that makes sense. So yay, that's, you know.
That's great. Can you show me the step where you actually built the JSON?
Yes, that was the next thing that I thought would make sense to do. So let's take a look at that script step. It is in method 4. It's this one right here. Sorry, I have a second screen. What you really want to see is this. There it is. So JSON set element, Beverly can help me with this. I don't even need to put anything there. I don't have to call it anything if I don't want to. But I just say the first name is going to be from this field and it's a string. The last name is going to be from this field and it's a string, and so forth and so on. So there it is.
You don't have to say JSON string or JSON number. You can use the number of the...
That's correct.
Yeah.
String is number 1. I think number is 2. Sorry, I didn't write those down. And they're also, I believe, optional. I think if I were to leave this out,
it would just make it string.
It would just make it string by default.
Yeah.
Don't you have to put like empty quotes or something?
Yes.
Nope. Do you?
Yeah, you need a parameter.
I don't think you
there.
can just leave it blank.
Oh, I thought you could just completely leave it blank. I hadn't done that, but okay. So yeah, I mean, it's you know, to me, the beauty of it is I have a name for a field and I can get the data out.
The difference is if you like are passing a number, it doesn't need to put the quotes around it.
Correct. That's right. Yep. So in this one here, let's see I said let's call it some number, and you can see there's no quotes around this 3097. Right. This 3097 right here has no quotes around it, whereas the name Allison does have quotes around it.
So what you're saying, Beverly, is if you use JSON number, that it doesn't require that you put the quotes on it.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And the other advantage of this is that you can pass the values like you did, but say you're on the other side, your field is not called address, but you can set field address 1 with whatever is in that JSON object, and it takes care of a lot of those problems we have with trying to import from all these different sources.
Yeah,
because we've created this.
And JSON doesn't care about the order that you declare these objects. It will alphabetize.
Also true.
Yeah. Scramble them anyhow. Martin, would you open up that step one more time? I want to take a screenshot just for my posterity, and I wasn't able to quick enough.
For your posterity or what?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So he could pull it out of his butt sometime in the future.
Yeah, whenever I need to do that, then I can do that. Thank you.
If you try and pass it as a variable,
too, is that if your logic dictates that you've created a JSON element like this, but down the road a little bit before you pass it, you have to add another element to this. You can do that, and within that, you know, when you use that JSON set element in that uppercase where you have the curly brackets, you just put the name of that field or variable that you're using, and add that element, and it'll magically show up. And the cool thing is that on the receiving side, it doesn't care whether you're using that element or not if you're not pulling, you know, the get element. So you're not screwing up things, which happen all the time when we use name value pairs.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you can, it's like you got this big cardboard box and you put stuff in it, in folders maybe, and the folders are labeled, and you want to add another folder later, no problem. And then you send it off to your friend, and your friend opens up the box and they go, well, this is all great, but I only need these 2 folders right here, and that's all they pull out. Doesn't matter. Just it's lovely. I like it.
If you try and pass it as a variable, I mean as a number, is it going to drop the leading zeros?
I would think so.
I would think so. I think it's going to be numeric. I haven't tried that, Alan. It's a good question.
It's
Yeah.
yeah. If you need it leading 0, it's text anyway.
Yeah, you better call it text.
Okay.
Yeah.
We like to say a zip code is always a text string.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I
Hey,
agree.
Martin,
Yeah.
I've got to leave. I've got to go to a business meeting.
Okay.
I really appreciate the presentation. This is really good. I learned a lot from it. I really did.
I'm surprised, John. I didn't think you'd learn a thing.
I'm not a JSON expert. I'm just learning it myself.
Well, I'm not either. I made the mistake, and let me just warn everybody: don't tell Jonathan you've been playing with something, because he'll then make you give a presentation. That's just how this
Yeah.
works. So
That's both of you, both
Yeah,
of you today.
Hey, it's been great, guys. I miss y'all. I'll try to come next month. I now have my boss's permission. So
good. Great to see you, John. Thanks for
See
being
you
here.
guys.
Hi, John.
Okay.
bye-bye.
I'm going to show you all one more thing, just show you that there are these 2 other functions. I didn't do delete element and I didn't do format elements, but list keys and list values are kind of interesting. I just thought I'd do a demo of that right quick.
Format elements is my favorite one. It actually turns it
Okay.
into something you can read.
Okay, well, it does do that. That's true. I just basically said, all right, enough's enough. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this. It's just going to execute a script step that says list keys, but let me just show you what it gives you. And the way I'm doing it is I'm just going to show it to you in a custom dialog, but it's basically saying, so inside that package, we have a folder or an element called address, comments, et cetera, et cetera. Notice, by the way, these are alphabetical. I didn't create them in alphabetical order. That wasn't the way I built them, but it builds them, it returns them alphabetically. That's just something to point out. And then if I list values, that also is just going to call a single script step to show me in a custom dialog. And so it's showing me, here's the values that I've got in there. You know, that's nothing fancy there, but it just 2 more tools that let you sort of see what you've got in your package.
Well, and also if you do the get elements, or get list elements, you can then iterate through them.
Right.
And do things with each one of them. Yeah.
Which goes very nicely with what John was talking about with the while function. And I had never really thought about the connection between those 2, but give me a JSON package, let me run a while function, and I can pull all kinds of stuff out of it. Yeah. Cool.
Any reserved characters in the data on the data side?
Beverly, do you know the answer to that? I don't.
Well, I'm sorry.
As far as I know, all the reserved anything can come across that's in quotes.
Yeah,
The values, the keywords is where you have problems.
If you have a paragraph return inside a field, when you look at that listing of that data in JSON, it'll substitute with I think it's /r to indicate a paragraph.
Yeah.
But then when you pull it out, it will resolve to a paragraph.
And that's the functions taking care of that. That's why his demo for that big comment field was able to come across, because the JSON did a substitution.
Takes care of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's neat. So
that's nice.
You know, this, oh no, it's not my final slide. I have one more slide after this, but basically this method resolves all the objections that the previous methods had. You know, everything that I had tried and had gotten sort of like, oh, but it doesn't work in that regard, is resolved here. And you can add data as needed. You can extract fields as needed. The variables can have sensible names. The disadvantage is there's a little bit of a learning curve. Near as I can tell, that's it. So how am I using JSON? This is my last slide, honest to goodness. I have a routine that I routinely call, no pun intended, when I've got an unexpected error. So I'm always testing for, you know, did that throw an error? And if it did, I didn't, you know, expect that. So what do? I just call an outside script that says, I need to log this, that something weird happened, because I've got users that are using this all the time, day and night, that I don't know about. And I need to just go look in that log file. So that little log script just basically takes the JSON element, pulls out the script, the user, the context, and the error. And I can have a very complex explanation of what was going on when this thing happened, including carriage returns and so forth. And it works. I also have you could think of it almost as a mail merge function. I call it parameterized text. So I have a bunch of emails that I want to send, but they're not complete. They've got missing pieces. And so I package up the email template with the substitute pieces, the name of the user, their email address, and so forth. as a JSON object. I hand that off to the email sender. The email sender unpacks all that, builds the email, and sends it off. I only have to have the email sender in one place, and I just pass it a JSON object to process. So I'm using it. It's actually something that's turning out to be quite useful for me in my simple little world. And I am now going to stop sharing my screen because I'm done.
Have you appreciate the demos of how we used to do it? Did you ever, back in the olden days, use repeating fields as a way to pass parameters amongst FileMaker files, in that it seems to have the advantage that you can do binary data containers, stuff like that?
You know, I'm not smart enough to have thought of that. If I had, I would have. If I'd have thought of it, I would have. But no, I didn't. I've never done that. In fact, the repeating fields were a little bit mysterious to me for a long time, but then I sort of figured out, oh, they have their place.
If you ever want to talk to an old person that knows about the olden times, feel free to call me.
Okay. Well, you and I can use the secret code word Nashoba, right?
I had
in this day of COVID, I'd say double helix, but
okay.
I had this thought about a way of passing JSON with stylized text, which I haven't tried yet, but I'm thinking that if you took that stylized text and then encrypted it, and then pass it as a JSON object encrypted, then unencrypted on the other end, you might get your text back. But I haven't tried that yet.
I wondered if there, I mean, JSON pretty much lets you pass whatever. Mm-hmm. And so if you could package it up in a way that JSON's not going to monkey with it, like you just said, encrypt it, I would think it would work.
And then you can potentially pass container data as well.
Mm-hmm.
You can base 64 it.
Right.
And stick it in there. I wonder if base 64 would work with formatted text.
I think
I was just thinking the same thing.
Yeah, I think I saw a reference to that when I was researching this. So I want to say yes, but I'm not for sure about that.
Maybe, yeah.
Well, anyway.
Well, thank you, Martin.
Hey,
so,
very nice.
There you go.
Thanks for taking the time to prepare.
Yeah, I apologize for downplaying it.
Well, compared to what Jonathan was talking about, or John was talking about, it was, simple.
Oh, no. This was wonderful.
You taught me to not underestimate how some things could be more than what you think they are.
Well, that's what it did for me was, and I think it was you, Jonathan. It was when we were still meeting at Alan's house. You said something about I think you used the word package, and I kind of went, oh. This was, 2 years ago or whatever. And I thought that's what I need, because at that time I was still sending those, the ones that had the issues with the carriage returns. And so I couldn't send what I wanted to send. I had to be careful about what I sent. Now I don't have to worry about it anymore.
I found it fascinating that you use the intermediary file.
Yeah.
Because that has a very unique, interesting application when you're doing syncing between two solutions.
Yeah.
The intermediate file. See, if you put something in the relationship graph,
mm-hmm.
you cannot close that file. That file will always stay open.
Mm-hmm.
So, like if you put your server file in the like you have an iPhone app, a FileMaker Go app, and you put the server, you had it locally and then you had it connect to the server. If you put the server in there, you could never close the server. So what you do is you use that intermediate file, and then the intermediate file connects to the server. Can call the server. So you have that, so you can close the server because you're not actually using it in your main file anymore. So when you roll your own syncing solutions, that's the technique to use to connect to the server. And I saw you using it that way. And basically what you were doing was a sync.
Yeah, in a way. What it started out for me was I wanted to have a common repository so that I only had to change things in one place. like the logo of the client.
Yeah.
So, you know, or the name of the solution, or my phone number, you know, if you need help, contact me at, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but you could do that in a separate table anyway, though.
Yeah, right. Well, it's, you know, it's
Within the file. Yeah.
My problem is I've accumulated a lot of bad habits through the years, and they're still with me.
Yeah, they call that six think. You know, before FileMaker 7 came out, and you know, when you with the one table per file.
Oh yeah, yeah. It took me a long time to figure out what that was all about.
Yeah.
So
I never even used 7 ever. I didn't pick it up till 8.
Ah, okay.
Because I'm like, what is all this crap?
Yeah, right.
I remember those transition days when 7 came out. You know, FileMaker lost a lot of developers. A lot of people did not make that transition well.
Well, 7 also didn't work very well.
No.
But
I was using a 6 server quite a bit, and so when they came up with 7, I went to DevCon, and it took an extra day class in advance on how to install 7.
Mm-hmm.
The person installing it spent an entire day, and they could not get it to work.
Uh-oh.
That's when I realized I was not going to go. So
we're going to drag our feet on this one.
Yeah. Well, I dragged my feet. I mean, I haven't upgraded to 19 yet. I'm still kind of like,
I like 19. I don't have any clients on it, but I use it.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, and all of my servers are 18.
Yeah. Is
I mean,
FileMaker server 19? Are we ready to go with that or not?
It's working okay. I just remember the 16 days when it took them like 3 or 4 iterations to get 16 actually working.
I still
properly.
have that painful memory. It's not that long ago.
Yeah. So, you know, and I was talking with one major developer who's, you know, pretty well known, and he said he's always two server versions behind.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm typically pretty conservative on stuff like that, but I've had the 19 server has worked well for me.
Oh, good. Okay,
Yeah.
that's good to know. I mean, I just, you know, when I feel like y'all are ready to say we're ready to go, then I'll think about it.
I haven't heard any complaints, but once it starts getting used a lot, then you might hear more, find more bugs.
The biggest feature in 19 is the ability to get data out of the web viewer back into FileMaker, and it's a game changer, but it's still the early days.
Yeah,
I mean the data API?
Not so much the data API, but you can call within your web browser. You can click on a button, push data back out.
Oh, execute it. Yeah, execute JavaScript.
Yeah.
But the data API is pretty cool because you're not really talking to the server. You're talking data to data.
That's right. You don't even need a server to execute them.
Right.
Yeah, the server's taking a rest.
Okay, good.
And that's where your JSON comes in.
Yeah.
Martin, is like your data API calls is all JSON. So you're actually making a query to the file 1, returning a JSON object, and using it in the second file or second table.
Okay.
Just through that query.
Uh-huh.
So the script isn't necessarily, you know, create the JSON, pass it along to the second script. You're actually making a query to that table.
To that table.
To get that data.
Gotcha. Okay. Whew. There's a lot to learn.
Yeah, it's a brave new world.
Yep. Got to keep people happy too along the way. So, I'm done.
Very good. That was wonderful.
Oh.
I got to tell you, I learned more from people who think they don't know anything than people who say they do. I mean, really, you've researched it. You've come with your own insights, and it's like, oh my God, I learned so much.
Oh, geez. Okay. Well, that's good.
Yeah. Well, and somebody else's journey may not have been your journey.
Right.
You know, somebody else's approach to something you know, they could come at it from an entirely different way and give you perspective that you would have never gotten on your own.
Yep.
So that's why groups like this, I mean, even with people who aren't, you know, super developers, you still find, well, of course, Martin is a super developer, but
No, I'm not.
But you find you know, somebody's different take on something would spark something that, like, wow, I never thought of it that way before. So I really, that's my takeaway from you know, running a group like this. I just have, you know, all kinds of new stuff all the time, just because of the sheer variety of presenters.
And
Yeah.
sometimes it's really simple stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
for years, when I've ever wanted to concatenate strings, I've always had first string and then an ampersand and then a paragraph and quotes, fulcrum quotes, another ampersand, next string, on and on. When you can use the list function.
Yeah, the list function has a problem though. The list function will drop out empty fields. So if you have a field in the list function that doesn't have anything in it,
you won't get a blank line with a carriage return. You'll get nothing at all.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
So that's,
but Michael, I never thought of that. I'm sitting here going, that's how I do it.
So yeah. Well, now I noticed in your calculation though that you had actual carriage returns. That you have field carriage return, field carriage return.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the way to do it. But if you use the list function, so you can get out of order. Also, what I didn't mention it during your presentation, but when somebody gives you carriage returns in a field, you set up any field that they could enter more than one line. You set up a substitute on the carriage return to some other character, and then when you paste it into the field on the other end, you substitute back.
Okay.
So I've done that a lot.
So this right here, I could have done all this with a list function right here.
That's right.
Yeah, unless you had address too.
Yeah, right.
And then
which
you would
was
have gotten
blank
out of order.
Sometimes. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Gotcha. Interesting. Okay, learned something. Yay.
And like I said, that's a real simple thing. And of course,
Yeah.
now I've heard some repercussions, so that's cool.
Yeah. Good to know.
Yeah, no, I use list function all the time. Now, what I would do a lot of times is I'll use the list function when I am like trying to build a list, and when I iterate through something, you know, instead of doing field plus carriage return plus new line, I'll do list field line. You know, so I'll just keep tacking on the new one, and the advantage there is if you have an empty record that you do want to skip over, the list list function will clean that up, so you don't get empty records in there. So I think one of John's things where he iterated through something, he had the such and such plus carriage return plus this, and I would have used the list function there.
Okay.
So you were going to show us something, Martin?
No, it was just wanted to make sure that I was thinking about it correctly. That here is where I could use the list function. So yeah, I get it.
You could if you could be sure that everything was in the.
Yeah, that every field was filled in, basically.
Right.
Yeah, if you knew that for sure, right? Okay.
Yeah, you can write the function to if is empty substitute.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Build your own your custom list function that would pad a field with a space if it's empty.
Yeah. And I've done that too. But the other thing is, oh man,
it was really good too.
Going out of my head.
Yeah.
All right. Oh well.
The other thing was, other questions from the group. Is that what you're going to say next?
Yes. Absolutely.
Hey, I've just got a quick question. You guys can laugh at me if you want.
Okay.
Need a simple HTML email program that supports attachments from within FileMaker, preferably without using a plugin. just simple HTML plus attachments.
How soon do you need it?
The necessary editor, etc. What's that?
How soon do you need it? Because I know it's coming to FileMaker. It's just a matter of when.
Well,
Yeah.
they've got the curl allows HTML mail, but it's curl.
It
Like,
doesn't.
I don't like curl.
It'll curl your toes.
Yeah.
It can be tedious, yeah.
Yeah, creating that mime, pass-through mime or whatever.
Yeah.
Creating the button. Okay, you know, it's a world of services, right?
Well, you can, yeah, absolutely, yeah. You could use a transactional mailer and send it to them. You know.
Or base elements plugin or
Yeah, I was trying to avoid that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave you all with something totally silly. Just as, okay.
All right.
One time I was doing some work for Allstate Insurance and we were generating a baseball team. That was the assignment. That's another story. But I needed quickly a random list of names because I couldn't use real characters' names. So I now have a random name generator. Watch this. Boom. There you go. There you go. You want some names? We got names. Just takes a bunch of last names and first names and concatenates them and puts them together. So you need a list of names? You wonder where I got these. I just generated them. Okay, I'm leaving now.
That is nice. I like that.
Isn't that fun?
What do you use?
Golembuski? I like that.
That's not normal in my opinion. So.
It's not.
What do you use for your random seed?
Randomize. Let me see what the script looks like behind the scenes. Basically, I think what I do is I assign a random number to all the first names, a random number to all the last names, and then I sort them by random number, and then I just pair them up.
Yeah. So when a random function to truly be random on a computer, you need to tie it into something that's continuously changing. So the random seed for a number, you get something like the system clock.
Yeah.
To be the randomizer function.
Right. And it wasn't that important for this. You know, I didn't, you know, nobody's going to be doing statistical analysis on this. I just, when somebody says, well, here's an example, I needed some fictitious users because I was doing screenshots of a system I'm writing. Well, you know, I could say John Smith and Joe Blow and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I thought, no, I'd rather use real names. And so I just, you know, went into this. Okay, the first user's name is Elaine Muron. Second one is Charles Fenton. Third one is Allison
And
Kulenko.
you can check for duplicates too at this point once you generate it to be sure you don't have duplicates. So
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I did a hospital simulation and we needed the names of a bunch of patients. Boom, got it. Okay. You know, anyway. All right. See, I told you that was just crazy, but anyway.
I'm not understanding why you think that's crazy, Martin. Because that's something that everybody needs.
That's because of the abuse you dished out before, Tony.
That's right. I blame Jonathan.
Oh, okay.
I have deep psychological scars as a result of today.
Well, you know what?
It'll take me weeks to heal from.
Okay. Well, I got a couple of ex-wives that'll tell you the same thing. So, and probably my current wife. So, and some daughters who will all tell you the same thing.
Anybody use the random function in an actual solution?
I don't remember when the last time I used it.
yeah, it's been a while.
I showed you my use of it.
I've used it as a password generator.
I have used it there.
Scary.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
I have done that. I've got, what did I do? I had a list of uppercase characters, lowercase characters, and I randomly picked characters from them and put them together into an 8-character randomly generated password.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've used the random thing for if you got like a quiz or something like that for randomizing answers, so that they don't appear in the same order for either the same group of people or.
And again, the statistical nature is it's not important that be statistically defensible. It just needs to be something that, you know, is usually different. That's good enough, right?
Yeah, in this instance, yeah.
Yeah, when I take tests, I like to randomize my answers too.
That's how you passed the SAT test, I heard, Jonathan.
Oh, why do you think I've been certified so many times? I think I've got 6 certifications. I know some of us have many more, but that's how I passed the certification exam.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Okay.
randomized answers.
Outlawing the SATs and ACTs, that no statistical correlation. So.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And if anybody has an idea of something that they would like to hear more about, I have a few ideas. But if anybody has a subject that they think would be of particular interest or general interest, please let me know. And we'll see
Just
what
know
we
that
can
if
do.
you do so, you're setting yourself up to receive heaps of abuse.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, actually, it's a male bonding technique. You know, guys like to beat each other up, and it means they like each other. Yeah. So, all right. Oops, I let out a secret. Oh no. All right. So I'm going to end the recording here.